Hello, this is Monica Volkmar, and today I'm going to take you through a little gait analysis case study. Usually when I do these, it's a game, and I'm trying to guess what might have happened in people's injury history based on nothing more than looking at how they're walking, how they're standing, and interpreting that through the lens of the flow motion model, which is Gary Ward's creation, which he teaches, and I am an instructor for in his anatomy in motion workshops. So I actually did record a video of a gait analysis and posture analysis for this gentleman, and then realized that it failed. So I'm not going into it blind. To be completely transparent, have already done a session with him online. So I know what's happening. I know what's coming. I know what the outcome was of what we worked on, but it was a cool example of a knee that was causing a little bit of chaos through his body. So I thought we'd look at it as a example for a case study that maybe some of you might find useful. So we'll start with the posture analysis. Just so that you know, some of the stuff that was a complaint for Jay here was his right medial knee. In the past, his right ankle has experienced not necessarily pain, but just a feeling of limited dorsiflexion, and the right foot feeling unstable in general. And his right hip has also caused him some general instability type feelings. I'll not mention too much about his injury history just yet. So just to take a look quickly at some of the things that stand out from his static alignment. Firstly, what might be the most evident thing is this shape of his spine. You can see a bit of a left lateral flexion through his spine, and his pelvis is hiked up higher on the left. His skull also appears to be tilted to the left, so we can call that a right hike of the skull, and his neck carries the same lateral flexion as the rest of his spine. And that's not really what we'd like to see. In gait, both eyes should be level on the horizon. And so if there's a spine that has a left lateral flexion, in order to keep the eyes on the horizon, the skull needs to tilt in opposition. So we'd have, if this is a left lateral flexion, we would have a right lateral flexion through the C-spine. Now what you can see is that in Jay's case, his left lateral flexion kind of continues all the way up. So we're missing a right lateral flexion in his neck. And it begs us to ask the question, can his spine laterally flex to the right when he walks? Or in his gait cycle, will we see that he is just stuck to the left and can't get out of it? A complaint I forgot to mention that he does have as well is some lower back pain. And I'm not sure, I have to clarify if that's in the middle, on the left, or on the right, but that would potentially become more interesting for us to understand if it's related to this left lateral flexion in the spine that he may or may not be able to actually get out of. Okay, so looking at his knee, which I alluded to, was something interesting. Can you see the difference between his right knee? Oh, sorry, that's his left knee, and his right knee. To me, it appears that his right knee is more extended. So it looks like the back of his knee is pushed more back towards us, which would leave this left knee in a more flexed position relative to it. We'll have to check that out from a side view and see what's happening there. What's also kind of interesting to me, if you look at this line on the inside, it's a bad line of his knees, you can see it looks like there's a bit on both sides of a valgus kind of situation where the inside of the knees, the femurs look rotated inwards. So that valgus shape usually represents an internal rotation of the femur. And to me, I could be wrong. I've been known to be wrong, but it looks like on the right side there's a bit more of a femur internal rotation happening. And what's interesting about that is that in ideal closed chain mechanics, we shouldn't see a knee that has extension with a femur that's internally rotated. That should not happen. Ideally, with an extended knee, we would see this femur externally rotating and extending at the same time. So I would want to investigate, and in fact, we did investigate in our session, what is the dynamic movement potential of his knee? Can it flex and have the right direction of femoral internal rotation? And can it extend and have a femoral external rotation? More on that later. Yes, so this knee was a main area of interest to me. Just one more quick thing, his feet. You can see there's a difference in his feet here. On the left, it's looking more like the rear foot is in an eversion, more tilted towards the inside edge. You can kind of see that based on how much space is here between the malleolus and the lateral border of his foot. Compare that to this. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to move the screen, but it's not moving. So compared to here, the malleolus on the right-hand side and the lateral border of his foot, there's much less space there. So the more space here, it's kind of showing us that his whole foot has been kind of shifted medially, the whole rear foot, leaving us with a bit more of an eversion. And this foot looking a bit more upright. So right foot is more of a neutral looking foot, and the left foot is more of an everted looking foot. The more inversion, more neutral looking foot would match together with having a more extended knee. That's part of a supinating leg shape. And the eversion here and the flexion here, that's more of a pronating leg shape. So the outlier is this potential internal rotation of the femur. That does not add up. Okay, but we should take a look at a side view here. Whoopsie. Okay, so what? Scroll. There we go. Okay, so here's his right side view. Look at the back of his knee. Just look at the degree of flatness back there. Does that look extended or flexed? And then if we look at his other side here, left side view, to me, that looks more of a flexion in the knee. Just to show you again. Straight, more flat at the back of this knee. Looking at the lateral border of his foot, it does look a bit more of an inversion shape in that foot. And here, more flexed, and it looks just a bit more the lateral side of his foot there. It has a bit more of an eversion vibe to it. Okay, sip of coffee. And why don't we take a look at, I have two Gait videos, one before we did anything and one after. So that's kind of fun. I don't usually have that. So let's take a look at the first one. And I'd like to point out what my hypothesis was about how that knee is influencing some stuff higher up in his body and just the flow of his gait in general. That might be causing some of that medial knee stuff. So remember, stuff that feels funky for him, medial knee, some stuff in the lower back and his right ankle historically. So full time, let's take a look and just see what stands out, some big picture things. You can't see detail really in a full speed. At least I can't because I'm not that good. But what stands out, can you see that left lateral flexion of the spine that we saw in his posture? It's quite prominent here. You can see now he goes left, left, left. Whenever he steps forward on his left foot, you get this left lateral flexion of the spine. Does he get the same amount of right lateral flexion? Right, right. You can see his shoulders just get level when he goes to the right. He doesn't actually seem to get into a right lateral flexion. So that's one thing that stands out. I don't know if at this speed we'll be able to tell much detail about his knees. It's tough to say anything, for me anyway, about his knees. So why don't we slow this down? And in his static alignment, his knee on the right looks to be extended. So I'm curious about whether or not he actually fully extends his knee behind him when he is in his propulsion phase. So we'll take him into a right suspension phase, which is right foot forward, fully weight bearing, pronating on the right leg, and a left propulsion phase. So we'll find that moment, which is where on the front foot, all the toes and the tripod are finally down. The foot is fully weight bearing. And the back leg, we ideally want to have a nice supination of the foot, a nice extension of the knee, a nice extension of the hip. Do we see any of those in the right propulsion, left propulsion, right suspension? Knee is flexed, but we know that knee was more flexed in his static alignment. And you can see pelvis, is it hiked on the right or is it kind of flat? It's a little bit hiked on the right, but it's mostly flat. The spine, his shoulders don't look that much different. So he's got a little bit of a right lateral flexion, but it's not that much. But we need to compare it to his other side. So if we go right away into his left leg forward, left suspension, pronating foot, right propulsion, supinating foot, and we're looking for when his left foot gets everything on the ground, all the toes and everything. It's hard to tell, so we'll have to do a front view after this. But I think it's right about there that it stops pronating. And interestingly, this knee, I think it's more flexed, which is kind of curious because in his static alignment, his right knee was presenting as more extended. I would expect that his right knee would therefore show more extension in this phase of gait when it's meant to be the most extended it will get in the gait cycle when it's behind him propelling. But it seems to be flexed. So my mind is wondering if that could be something to do with the transverse plane, that suspected increased internal rotation of his right leg. You can see that his pelvis is more hiked on the left, which was showing up in his static alignment, and he appears to have a little bit more of that left lateral flexion in the spine, which we saw also in the static alignment. So this is consistent with his static, but this is different than his static. So what's going on there? We'll take a look at the front view just to confirm that the timing of his feet are what we're looking for. So this is left leg forward. We're waiting to see when his toes and everything get fully on the ground. Right about there. Interestingly, this gives us a little bit more of an appreciation of how flexed his right knee actually is here. Flexed and the foot completely off the ground. Ideally, in our propulsion, we want to have 2 points of contact, first metatarsal, fifth metatarsal, fully on the ground, foot supinated, knee extended, hip extended, and an external rotation in the femur. None of that seems to be happening. And there's that lovely left lateral flexion of the spine. Let's compare that to when he gets his right foot forward in a suspension. So we're looking for the moment when his right foot gets fully on the ground. What's kind of funky about this side is you can see his big toe on the right hits first on the ground. That was not happening on the left foot. big toe plantar flexion like that is indicative of a pronation mechanic. However, this foot was the less pronated foot at rest. And it really looks like the rest of his foot is still inverted through the rear foot, even through the forefoot, rolled to the outside. But the big toe is the one piece that's trying to pronate. So that's really interesting. So let's wait until everything gets on the ground there. All the toes are down, tripod is down. Looks like it's the second toe finally goes down there. There. So you can see it's a bit better on this side of his left propulsion. Is that's supposed to be an L. Um, left propulsion. The knee is not totally extended, but it's more extended than on the right for sure. So in his system, his brain will interpret this as the extended knee. He at least has a bit of big toe contact, whereas the other foot was completely off the ground. So we can say he's missing a dynamic extension of the knee in spite of standing with it passively extended back. If we go back to him facing from behind here, a hypothesis that I had about that, which we then investigated in our session, we get him back into that spot where it was more like this was his left suspension, right propulsion. If we think about propulsion phase as a whole body shape, where we have the pelvis hiked on the left, lateral flexion of the spine to the left, and the knee should be fully extended on the right. The intention of that knee extension is it's part of a supinated leg shape, which will become a rigid lever that propels the body forward onto the front leg. Now, what if you do not have that rigid lever? What might be a strategy for the body to propel the mass forward into the front leg in order to accomplish our goal of locomotion? Well, there's other body parts one can use, and it just might be that spine shape, that left lateral flexion, which will definitely transfer mass into a left leg if you laterally flex. Just standing upright, if you try it and you side bend your torso to the left, you'll feel more weight probably going into your left foot. Bodies are very clever and they always have a reason for why they do what they do, because it's helpful for us to get around and allow us to do what we want to do. For Jay, it might be there's not a capability of extending here for whatever reason, injury history, which we'll get to. But a clever way of getting the body onto a left leg might be to use the spine as a propulsion instead of this leg. So in our session, I asked Jay about this, and he told me that he did indeed, when he was in his 20s, have an injury to his right knee where he fell. And the shape he described was that his leg kind of went like that. So this is an internal rotation of his femur, and the knee went into a valgus. And at the time, I don't know how old Jay is exactly, but in his 20s, we don't usually take the greatest care of our bodies. We don't always seek the best physiotherapy. Most of the time, our parents didn't really know that physio was a thing we should do, and we assume the body will heal and go back to perfect function. And indeed, his body healed. But one of the questions we asked was, did you heal in the position of injury? Did you heal with a femur that is now more internally rotated? And could that extension of the knee be a strategy to try to bring that internally rotated femur back to a more neutral position? Because in Gait, what an extension of the knee should create or couples with is an external rotation of the entire leg from the femur all the way down to the talus. So could that be a compensatory thing happening in his leg, which is then leading to this compensatory thing happening in his spine? That is the question. Now, I'm going to put Jay back into his right propulsion phase here. And then I'm going to show you. So where is that? All the toes down on the foot there. So here is his right propulsion, aka lack thereof. Now we investigated this theory in a session. We got him to assess, does his knee flex and can the femur internally rotate while it's flexing? Does his knee extend and does his femur externally rotate while he was extending? And the answer to both of those questions was no. Statically, his knee is a bit backwards. And in fact, when he extends his knee, his femur internally rotates. When he flexes his knee, it does not do anything, which is kind of telling us, well, his knee might, or his femur rather, might be stuck in an internal rotation and cannot move out or in of that. It's just stuck in one spot with not a lot of options. So if we compare this video then to just after we did our session, I got him to film another video, and I'm not saying that, I think it's this one here. Yeah, I'm not saying that he is perfectly fixed because that's unrealistic, but let me zoom in on this bottom one. This is the after video on the bottom. We're going to try to get him into the same phase of right propulsion. Zoom in on what that foot is doing and see if there's any difference. And look at that. Knee slightly more extended. Toe is starting to touch the ground. And I wasn't expecting a lot. We did maybe 2 reps of an exercise and then started talking through another exercise, but didn't really go to town on it. So we did minimal intervention, but we brought awareness to the ability for his femur to externally rotate while he extends his knee. And by the way, that femur external rotation should be more external rotation than the tibia. So there's actual movement in the joint of the knee between the femur and the tibia. So we got him to experience a bit of that, walk around, and then refilm this video. Now, I know that, okay, so just so you know, I'm not ignoring the fact that this is a straight line, and I'm just want to sit it on an angle. This is the runway that he's walking on. But it also looks like the degree of height in his pelvis on the left is a little bit smaller in the after video than it is on the before video. A bit more, this is exaggeration, but oh, sorry. But it looks like the hike here is a bit bigger, and the hike here on the left is a little bit reduced, which would be great. He doesn't need to do as much hike, because what if that big hike in the pelvis was part of the strategy to get his mass onto his left leg? Remember that a hike in the pelvis will bring the pelvis closer to the leg, creating an adduction in the hip. So an adduction in the hip is always the front leg towards which the mass is moving. If you can't propel with the back leg and get onto the front leg to adduct it, excessively hiking the pelvis might be a useful way of actually getting the mass forward until it starts to potentially hurt because of putting extra strain, tensions, and compressions through the body. So there's definitely more that can be looked at, and there's more to say, and there's more work to do. But I wanted to highlight that. I just wanted to highlight that. I thought it was pretty cool. Yeah, so main takeaways from this are, if you see a knee that is pushed extended, but it looks like it's more valgus, that is an anomaly worth investigating. It's worth asking, is there injury history there? And it's worth, I learned not to assume. I learned not to assume that a knee that's extended at rest will be the one that extends more in gait, because clearly it's not. Just because it's extended in a resting posture doesn't mean it would be good at moving into extension at the right times in the gait cycle. Now, I also would probably need to do a complete analysis of all of the phases. We just looked at one phase, a suspension propulsion phase, but I don't got 2 hours for that. So sometimes quick and dirty gives you enough information. And hopefully this one little point is something to inspire you in your practice to look at knees and look at spines in a holistic way. Maybe another update will come soon. I'm hoping to hear more from Jay about the work that he's doing now with this bit of information, and maybe we'll do another video after that. But anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day.